Hey friends, and welcome. Today we're going to be making an easy beginner's level hydrangea, and I'm using brilliant magenta, deep magenta, neon blue, aqua green, phthalo green, and burnt sienna, and of course titanium white. I'm starting on this little 4x4 wooden panel, and I'm just taking my neon blue and mixing that off and on with some of the titanium white, and just doing some hash marks across my canvas so that it's not just one solid background. Here I'm just laying down my my floor. At the end of this, you won't really, or my tabletop or whatever it is my arrangement's going to sit on, going ahead and adding some shadow area there, and again just using my hashing brush strokes to add my background colors, and creating more of a light source coming from my left hand side. And as I approach and continue to do this and move towards that area there where I was working horizontally, I want to work my brush strokes back into that so that you really can't see where the background ends and begins at that. There I am going there at that horizontal level. And I'll just keep working on that for a minute. When I'm happy with it, then I'll dry it and begin to work on my thing. So I am using a number 5 and a number 3 round brush. These techniques work better if you have a Filbert for this particular flower. But I did not have one on hand, and so I'm just going to be using my rounds. So hydrangeas just consist of several smaller flowers. It's one big ball into several smaller flowers that seed in it. So first what we're going to do is we're going to create our round ball, and I'm just adding some of my my colors and blend, and also making sure that I have some deeper, darker colors where I want those shadows to be. Think I'd be fine with losing my hearing. And then I still have some of the gesso on my palette, and so I'm taking that and I'm just encircling around the ball that I created or painted, and as you can see better on this one, and I'm just working that around it, and that just kind of helps take some of that those background florals that will be there a little bit more out of focus, and we only want just a few of the petals to be our focal points. I turned into a shoulder you cried on. Never wanted it to go that way. I'm so foolish, wasting my time on you, thinking we'd end up together one day. Lady, you can carry on weeping, but and it's hard to really see in this video. The camera doesn't pick up the subtle differences between the deep magenta and the bright magenta, or the radiant magenta, but there are differences in the colors that I'm laying down. I'd be fine with losing my hearing. And so I'm taking some of my magenta and my aqua green, and I'm mixing that up. But I wonder if all that's gonna do is make it worse. I think I'd be wrong to blame it all on you. And I decided that I really didn't want to use that mixture. I was thinking about using it for some of my leaves, but later on I'll introduce in some of the phthalo green and burnt sienna and make more of a different color with my leaves. So what you see me doing here is a hydrangea has four, like I said, 4 petals, and so you're really just kind of making, if you think of it as kind of a star, but you're not going to see all of those petals depending on how you want your flower facing. And so in this technique, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of pushing my brush, my bristles down, and sometimes in some instances I'm making that that little flower within the flower by adding 4 petals that meet in the center. But I'm not doing that the entire way around the flower, because I don't want all of the petals to be the focus of this painting. So you really only need a few of your brush strokes to be more of the focal point of your piece. And this is you know, a very loose way of painting a hydrangea, and later we can get into a more detailed approach of painting a hydrangea. But I did have this request from someone who wanted to see how to paint one, and so I'm starting at the very beginning. I really wasn't sure where their level was, and so this is what I would do if I was a beginner learning to paint a hydrangea. You're really just laying that brush down. A Filbert brush lays a more accurate petal down for hydrangea, so you're just laying them down, making sure you go outside of your original circle that you painted on. This doesn't want to look circular. You want to see petals coming off of that circle. And so I'm just adding variances in my petals as well. Sometimes I'm picking up the deep magenta, other times I have a mixture of the brilliant magenta and deep magenta, and sometimes I'm adding a little bit of white to highlight a few petals. And then later on, other times I might add in some of that neon blue to make more of a purple to my magentas and bring back some of that shadow color. The idea in layering these is so that you can continue to see some of that darker background that we created, and it gives you the depth of the flower. It keeps it from being flat looking. No, I don't want to stop interfering, but I wonder if all that's gonna do is make. So it's really quite an easy flower to paint. You just have to sit down and practice with it, and the brush really does the work for you in this technique. Though I never asked for anything from you, I was hoping I would get. And so I'm going to go back in as I feel like I need to, and when I'm putting my petals in, sometimes I want to make a complete flat, star-shaped petals, and sometimes I just want to lay down a single petal, because that might be all you see depending on how the bulb is turned. And so make sure that you are, even if you have to, that you're turning your canvas if you need to make sure that your petals are directional in many different directions, and understand the anatomy of the flower, and that you know, this has dimension, and that sometimes you're going to see petals on top of petals, and so you might not see the entire one under another one. And so you can see I'm just taking my time and building as I need to. And if it looks like your paint is becoming mixed too much into the previous layer, then you need to stop and leave it alone and let it dry, and then come back over it once it's dry, because otherwise it's just going to continue to get muddy. With acrylics, you always start with your darker layer and then you build to your lighter layer. I know that for my watercolorists out there, it's just the opposite.
Think I'd be fine with losing my hearing, 'cause both of my ear canals are still searing from your words. No, I don't want to stop interfering, but I wonder if all that's gonna do is make it worse. I think I'd be wrong to blame it all on you.
So this is what I have at this time. And if you really look at it, it really only has a few of the petals that are really in focus. Sometimes I would mix some of my color into the gesso to make sure that you could see a shape, but it was really going to be like out of focus, if that makes sense. All right, so I've decided now that I'm going to make my vessel for the flowers to be in, and I'm thinking kind of a pottery type vase. And so I've mixed some of my burnt sienna with my white, and I'm just laying that in right now. I really didn't have a plan for this so much, other than just picking up my brush and committing to what someone asked me to do for them, and showing them where to start with painting a hydrangea. So I'm just taking in some of that deeper, right out of the tube, burnt sienna, and I'm laying that down under where the flowers are casting a shadow and blending it into the wet paint that I had just laid down. Now I'm taking some of my burnt sienna and phthalo green and kind of creating more of an earthy, cool green. Hydrangea leaves can generally be large and dark. Some varieties can be dark, others can be more of a warm green. And so I'm trying to stick with odd numbers, and with my 3 hydrangeas, I'm going to go on ahead and add 5 leaves. No, I don't want to stop interfering, but I wonder if all that's gonna do is make it worse. I think I'd be wrong to blame it all on you. Couldn't have known I wanted more than you could give, though I never asked for anything from you. I was hoping I would get a little bit closer than I did. I turned into a shoulder you cried on. I never wanted it to go that way. I'm so foolish, wasting my time on you, thinking we'd end up together one day. Lady, you can carry on weeping, but your tears gonna hit the floor, 'cause my shoulder won't be there for you no more. Won't be there for you no more.
Just right.
Okay, baby. Okay, y'all. Just heard my husband walk by and walk out while I was doing my voiceover here. So I'm just continuing to work on my leaves, and I'm going back in with more of my aqua green and adding some highlights to those. Adding a little warmth back into the leaves.
Couldn't have known I wanted more than you could give. Though I never asked for anything from you.
I probably filled around with the leaves a little bit too much here for this particular video, but it's just what I do. I wasn't feeling how they were looking, but eventually I decided that I could move on, and I'm going to go back in and continue to build on making some shadows here and kind of darkening that shadow that's immediately under the flowers and leaves. And then adding back some of the light source that should be coming over there from the left-hand side. And I'm just kind of playing, going back and forth there, and seeing what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And sometimes painting is just all about a feeling. You lay it down, you see what works. If you don't like it, you take it back and do something different. And sometimes it helps to turn your painting in different directions in order to, get perspective. And so you see me turning my canvas quite a bit here. I have a harder time painting small. I can do a huge, large painting and not have any difficulty, but the smaller paintings for some reason are more difficult for me, and I've been doing a lot of them lately. So I'm going into my blue and my magenta and making a little bit more of a reddish purple. And now I'm going to add some of my burnt sienna, and making more of a burgundy there, and going back into the shadow that would be cast by this arrangement of flowers, and adding it. And I'm going to add a little touch of white to that, and just kind of pull it around to the front and under.
Couldn't have known I wanted more than you could give. Though I never asked for anything from.
All right, so I'm taking my 0.5, and I decided that the piece of pottery needed a little something, so I'm taking my burnt sienna and I'm just adding some lines that follow the curve of the vase, and they're skippy lines. They don't go all the way across. That would look a little bit overdone, I think, and since I want this to look more like an old world piece, and that's the way I did mine. But you do you. Create one like you would like to. My leaves have had a chance to dry now, so I'm going back in and adding some highlights with my aqua. And this one just wasn't doing it for me. I just had to keep playing with it.
I'd be wrong to blame it all on you. Couldn't have known I wanted more than you could give. Though I never asked for anything from you.
So make sure your paints are staying good and moist, and especially when you're using these smaller brushes, you want to make sure you keep a very good point on these when you're working as well.
But your tears gonna hit the floor, 'cause my shoulder won't be there for you no more. Won't be there for you.
And keep going back to that one leaf there. And there you have it. I hope that you will practice and show me what you do.
Think I'd be
And
fine
tag
with
me at
losing
Art by
my
Tammy
hearing.
Lassiter. Blessings.